Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm making this very important video on Shani Jayanti, Saturn's birthday, which happens on the new moon in Taurus. And I'm making this video about Saturn in all 12 houses. This is Saturn, the bringer of truth and peace. You're going to get a version of Saturn today that you don't often get. Usually Saturn is talked about as the fearsome one, the heavy one. It's often talked about, he's so feared because he's the planet of past karma and, heavy consequences and things like that. Of course, that's how it can feel to us. But in the highest sense, Saturn is really the energy of truth and peace. And they're deeply related, of course. We don't have any peace until we're in alignment with the truth. And the truth is really what brings us peace in life. And so we're going to go through each of the 12 signs, the 12 houses today, talk about Saturn as the bringer of truth and peace.
Please like the video. Clicking like helps a lot more than you know. It pushes the video higher in relevant video searches. Also, please leave a nice comment. Comments also help more than you know as it raises the video in searches. Many times with hundreds of likes, there are only a dozen comments and they can be disproportionately negative. So be positive. Let me know if you like this. Even just a few words really help. So subscribe, ring the bell to get notified of upcoming videos.
Yes, thanks to everyone who does that, and thanks for those who watch my videos. A lot of people who are watching this aren't subscribers, so please subscribe. I do updates like this all the time. This will be a great one. I have to tell you, I'm a great fan of Saturn and bringing light and wisdom into the nature of Saturn, because I think of all the astrological symbols and astrological energies, he is the most misunderstood, most confused, unnecessarily. All of the great things that have happened in life have Saturn's imprint on them. You first have to understand that all the planetary energies, they're not things up there doing something to you down here. This is the first problem, the first misunderstanding that needs to be clarified. It's not like here you are, this person, just trying to live your life, but then those planets are up there doing things, and some of them give you good things, some of them give you bad things. Oh, Venus gives us good things, Mercury gives us good things, Saturn, he brings bad things, and it's bad things that you deserve, your karma. He's the karma Raj, the Dharma Raj. This is what is talked about, the Lord of all your, quote, karma. It's so misunderstood because it even implies that karma means bad karma, means punishment. Karma isn't punishment. Karma is the actions that you've taken and the result that comes. All of the planets are agents of karma. All of them. Their planets are nothing but karma. Life on Earth is nothing but karma. Right now, you are perpetrating karma, if you want to use the word perpetrating. Right now, I am. It's just the actions that you do based on your tendencies, and then the results that come back that show you the truth, now we're getting to Saturn, of what your actions mean, and the level of consciousness that your actions reveal. So, I understand why Saturn is put in that heavy position, because it takes a while for our karma, for our actions to magnify over time. So over time, we get to really see the truth of our actions. That's why I say this video is truth and peace. And as you see, it says here, Saturn, time, pressure. These are two very important words for Saturn. But again, the first thing I want to clear up is this idea that Saturn is the karma planet. Get out of the idea that karma means punishment. or something you did wrong, and Saturn's going to punish you for it. He's going to hold you to account. He's going to all this heavy language. None of that is in proportion to reality. And again, this is what we need to do with Saturn. One of the biggest things, I could have had a bunch of keywords, but one of them is also maturity. He makes us grow up about the nature of life. And we can tend to look at him in this punishing way when we are immature. A good example is like when we were kids and our parents made us eat healthy food. It felt like it was punishment because we just wanted to eat candy. Well, let me eat candy. Oh, you're going to make me eat broccoli? Oh, you're so mean. But that's only because we're childish and immature. Once we get older, we realize, okay, they were making us eat good food so our teeth didn't rot and so we could be healthy. So this is really all Saturn is. And I'm not just trying to minimize it because, yeah, Saturn brings those things like death, quote. But again, even that, do you think you're not going to die? Do you think you're going to live forever? You should realize that you're not. And it's okay. So, as it says here, Saturn is Shani, it's his name, Lord of Shanti, or peace. So he shows the pressure of time. So the reason Saturn can feel heavy is because, again, it's those things that take a long time to resolve. And over time, we see the truth of something, how our actions magnify over time. And the awareness that we only have so much time and the pressure that brings us. So again, we can even look at this just in general in life, that we only get so much time. And what we do with that time shows how we live our life and how much we get out of it. So this nature of Saturn as being the planet who reveals the truth over time, because over time you will see the truth. Thinking of any situation, let's say a relationship or a job. Let's say relationship, because all of a sudden one day we broke up. Probably wasn't all of a sudden one day. You saw the things happening the whole time. The problems were there. You made a commitment to try to work hard to make the thing work out anyway. But then eventually it didn't. Eventually it broke up. Okay, but that weakness was there the whole time, but it took a while for the problem in the relationship to actually break it completely. That's Saturn. Over time, things wear out. Everything wears out, including your body eventually. So again, the pressure of time reveals the truth about life and about all situations that only have a certain amount of time. And knowing when to leave a situation is also very important, because we can stay with something for too long, or we can stay with it not long enough. We can not commit hard enough and then have regrets because we didn't try hard enough. Or other times we say we stayed too long and tried too long and wasted our time. This awareness of time is what Saturn brings us. So again, just see it in a very neutral way. There's no punishment in it. There's no this, there's no that. And we don't learn anything until we start to see it magnify over time. Even like the example I used of the kid who just wants to eat candy. Well, you'll do it a few times, but then eventually, over time, you realize, okay, that's why it's not good to keep eating pizza and hamburgers or whatever, even when we get older. Because we get the consequences of that, the difficult consequences, right? So in this way, Saturn does show, he shows the limitations, as you see one of the keywords, and the disconnection that we get. But it's a disconnection from spirit, because underneath it all, we're true spirit. And Saturn literally shows how we've disconnected from spirit and the pain of that, the pain of being disconnected. And it's painful to the ego. It's not painful to the soul. The thing to really remember is that you're not the separate person. You're not this ego. You're not the separate person. You're the supreme self. You're the Paramatman. Your true nature is self, is soul. You are a soul. You have a separate identity, a body. You have emotions. You have intelligence. You have hope. You have desires. But you are the soul behind them, not the limited expression of them. You're not the intelligence. You're not the limited ideas. You're the cosmic intelligence behind it, the cosmic wisdom. You're not happiness that enjoys things. You're the bliss, the transcendent bliss behind it. You're not the limited power, the limited identity. You're the supreme identity, the supreme truth behind it. But what Saturn does is he gives us this awareness of this separateness. He gives us the awareness in the natal chart of the limitation. So if Saturn, anything Saturn is influencing by aspect, by conjunction in the chart, or any of the houses that he's in today, I'm going to talk about the houses, but he brings pressure to that thing, and where we see the limitation of that thing. I only get so much of that. Okay. And again, that brings a disconnection. Limitations and disconnections are there because, again, a disconnection from the self through the limited self, through the limited ego. But as such, he's also the one that liberates us from that, because until we have to face that problem and that pressure of time, we don't take our salvation seriously, and we're committed to the wrong things. This is why we have no peace until we face these things. Even just we have no peace until we face the truth of our life, which is that we're limited, that we're going to die, this body is going to die, but what's beneath that? So in many ways, Saturn is the most joyful, most blissful. It brings the awe and reverence for time and the gratitude of the time you have. That's why it says the deepest sensitivity. And again, this is one of the things that's just not talked about with Saturn. We've all suffered in life, and we've all suffered a lot. Life on Earth in this body is hard. A lot of pain and disappointment. We have incarnated in this very dense form. In the Prajnanika Upanishad, it says we are this dense jumble. It says a dense jumble. The soul has taken on this dense jumble. Sometimes it says like a clod of earth. Like you squeeze some earth and make it into a clod. That's what we are in this lifetime. Very fragile, very frail, sensitive, aware of how vulnerable we are, fearful, confused, with an ego that doesn't want to grapple with any of it, with an ego that doesn't want to face it because it scares us, because we're scared by all of our limitations. And again, wherever Saturn is, he shows where we have this, where we become aware of the limitations. But overcoming those limitations are what make us sensitive to others, sensitive to the suffering of others. And it's only someone who is terrified and fearful who has no sensitivity, because we're all afraid. And the person who's the most afraid is the one who pretends they're not. is the one who is so callous and insensitive, and they're so terrified of looking vulnerable or being vulnerable that they become desensitized. And this is also what Saturn does. We can be so terrified that we try to hide it and we wall it off from ourselves and others and put on this pretense of efficiency, and we become very desensitized. And Saturn also gives us the capacity to do that. One of the examples that I use with Saturn as well, the incredible capacity of human beings to endure, hardship. Like, think of people that go through incredible burdens, like concentration camp survivors, and people who, how do you get through that? Like, on some level, Saturn is also that very primal, instinctive energy that says, well, I'm not sure about anything that's going on, but I know that I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm still alive. And as long as I'm breathing, I'm going to hang in there. So in a very deep level, especially when you go deeply into the spiritual path, you hear things like dark night of the soul. And this is Saturn when we get stripped down to the bare essence of just breath and nothing else. Like, I have no idea what to do, but I'm still here, and I'm just going to take it one moment after the next. And sometimes this happens. It happens when people have real spiritual, you can call it a spiritual crisis or spiritual rebirth, where you break and you realize, I have no idea who I am or what I'm doing. So I'm just going to sit here and be still. And that's what Saturn gives us too. Now, it doesn't have to happen at the end of a Herculean or a failed Herculean task where now you doubt yourself so much that you can't move. You're paralyzed with existential crisis, although that does happen. We don't need to have it be that harsh. In fact, this is why when you do things like yoga, meditation, you're naturally tapping into Saturn's power, which is the power and the capacity to just face the truth. It doesn't have to be the terrifying situations that I'm talking about here, right? It turns into the terrifying situations when we avoid it. But when we don't, and again, especially if we want to be spiritual people and really know our true nature, then that pressure becomes a great catalyst for introspection, change, solitude. We need to make peace with ourself on the highest level. And most of what we do is we lose ourselves in others. This is why Saturn is very good in allowing us to be by ourselves and face the truth. So with these things in mind, you see I'm using the term pressuring to talk about Saturn in each of the houses. So when you bring Saturn into the first house, again, you can look at this in natal charts or in the sky or in any situation. This is going to be the type of quality that we're talking about. But Saturn in the first house is going to bring this pressure of time and seriousness and the awareness and this feeling of separation from the full thing. Again, because that's what Saturn is doing. We're always aware that we're separated from certain things, to some extent. But wherever Saturn is, it becomes a lot of pressure about that separation. That aspect of life, we really feel the heaviness and the pressure of that level of separation. And so with first house, it's about literally your identity. And a person can really feel the pressure of their false identity. So again, in many ways, you'll see Saturn's pressure is awakening us from the false to the true. So the false identity of the first house is often the thing that shows up in what we would call personality. Personality, particularly all of our phony personalities. We're very phony. A lot of people are very phony. It's hard to find people that have integrity, that are not pretentious. Almost everyone is pretentious. We have a personality and we're rewarded for being pretentious. And particularly if we don't know ourselves beyond wanting others to like us, or as we're getting to know ourselves, we're like, this behavior that we put on, this mask that we put on in the first house is really hiding our truthful identity. So the first house is not the mask. In fact, in Western astrology, they even say it's the mask, the ascendant, the mask. It's not, because they say that the sun is the true self. It's not. The first house is the truthful identity in this lifetime. Instead, we put on this personality. And when Saturn's in the first house, let's say, we'll talk generally like it's your natal chart, then Saturn brings this pressure where you realize that we're being phony, and Saturn will make us withhold and be careful about not making a mistake with that thing. Because where Saturn is, we're aware of our mistakes. Again, this pressure of over time, we remember our mistakes, and they can weigh too heavily on our mind if we're not careful in general. This is why also in general, it's better when Saturn is over near the seventh, sixth, seventh, and eighth houses is better, because Saturn is further away from the first house, which is your spontaneous identity. So Saturn in the first house can create this kind of identity crisis, pressure on your identity to reveal your true nature underneath. Second house pressuring values. Values also relate to things like speech, money. When Saturn's in the second house, pressuring values means, again, we inherit the values of our family, of our childhood, and then we have to evolve and develop our own values, because people that raised you don't have the same values you have, at least not exactly. No one has exactly the same values, and your values evolve and change. So Saturn in the second house, often the person's family is really important. Their values, often money is very important, and they have to overcome a certain tendency maybe to have a little bit of greed, a little bit of fear of not having enough money, and eventually learning to find true value in life. Because remember, it says Saturn is really pressuring the false values, just like Saturn in the first was pressuring the false identity to reveal the true identity. Here he's pressuring false values, counterfeit values, money and popularity and people valuing me because of how I look, the clothes I'm wearing or whatever. That's the real value. No, that's materialistic. So finding true values and pressuring those values is what Saturn in the second house is about. So again, many times wherever Saturn is, we have to concentrate over time and put a lot of effort and energy into that thing in order to change it. It's pressuring ideas and ego is Saturn in the third house. The third house is very much about it's literally our ego and our ideas and how we're meant to work through things through our own separate paradigm of understanding. But these Saturn in the third house is saying, okay, you need to get serious about these things. And again, this is another important aspect of Saturn, of course, is seriousness. You have to take these ideas seriously, not just play around with them. And so, again, someone will take their ideas very seriously. They'll also, again, Saturn tends to be careful and cautious a little bit. So when Saturn, wherever he is, we tend to hesitate a little bit, and we tend to be a bit sort of conventional. So serious ideas, conventional ideas, slow to change and afraid to get the wrong ideas and whatnot. So when Saturn's in the third house, it can hold back some of the spontaneity, but we'll look for serious ideas to really concentrate on, and we'll value time-tested ideas, things that have been, again, time-tested, put through the ringer, right? So these ancient teachings, a lot of times people have Saturn in the third. They're very attracted to these ancient teachings. Now, you can see here I have this, I have a free ebook that I just put together about these Saturn, all of these Saturn teachings. You can get this free interactive ebook, Saturn, Bringer of Truth and Peace. Go to saturntruth.com. I'm actually going to upload a quick video to show this to people as well. But you'll really love this. There's a free ebook, and then there's also a full one that you can get where I go over all of the important qualities of Saturn, and it's an interactive ebook where there's also video embedded and things like that. There's also a flip book version, and also again an interactive ebook where you can play the videos from inside. But again, it's a great way to organize all of the information, so I just wanted to put that in there as well. I'll have a link in the description. But then Saturn in the fourth house, pressuring feelings. Again, this can be heavy. This is one of the places where, again, Saturn's sitting there in the fourth house, serious feelings and emotions, and he's bringing pressure there. So, but again, wherever he is, we take that thing very seriously. So it's good that we take our feelings seriously. Again, because we live on the level of emotions, however, we can just be very emotional about these things, and rather than going deep into the heart and really connecting with deeper peace and wisdom in the heart, when Saturn is there, we can first tend to be quite serious and triggered and worried. But again, you can also see when someone had Saturn in the fourth, maybe they had a lot of pressure from their mother or their nurturing, or they feel emotionally pressured. Again, that's just a catalyst. It's a catalyst to then go inward and find the true source, to find the true nature of that thing. And again, so it's pressuring feelings, but it's mainly pressuring emotions on the surface, so you go deeper into authentic feeling and devotion. So again, all of the places where Saturn go, they can be difficult, because Saturn is showing where we're getting that pressure. We're really feeling that thing directly. And there's no fooling around about it. It's not like, oh yeah, there's this and there's that. It's like he's there going, you're not going to turn away from this aspect of life. And again, also when he's aspecting a planet in the sky as well, like in your natal chart, and his influence feels like this again. So when he's influencing the fourth house, it feels like that heavy emotional stuff, but it's a catalyst for pressuring our false feelings, our counterfeit feelings. Counterfeit feelings are really emotions, because we think we're just the emotions, and we're not. We're the depth of feeling underneath. Now in the fifth house, Saturn is pressuring creativity or false creativity. So again, wherever Saturn is, we put a lot of time and attention on that thing, and creativity can be all kinds of things, but it literally also means like writing and music and art and whatnot. Saturn in the fifth house. And again, you could also say join the fifth house ruler, aspecting a planet in the fifth house. Again, these are influences, but we can talk essentially about him sitting there in the natal chart. Person will really concentrate on creative matters. Now, fifth house is also called the child bhava, so it can mean literally children, but it can also mean, again, like music and other kinds of things. But wherever Saturn is, again, there's going to be a bit of, say, suffering, but there's going to be a feeling of limitation. Like you work really hard on that thing, but then also realize this ain't it. I'm working really hard, and I still feel the limitation. Again, this is how Saturn kind of gets us. We can kind of work ourselves to death. Like work so hard trying to make it complete, but Saturn is our awareness of not being complete. So ultimately, the fifth house is not about any work of art or piece of music. It's about creative intelligence, personal creative intelligence. And that includes spiritual practices and giving birth to ourself, being reborn. Saturn in the sixth house pressuring work, and it's actually like pressuring work into service. So it becomes service. And this is one of the better placements. The sixth, seventh, and eighth houses are really where Saturn is the best because it's furthest away from the ascendant. But sixth house is where there's all this hard work, stress, and difficulty. Anyway, it's the difficult area of life where there's nothing but hardship and difficulty. And again, hardship and difficulty is not a big deal. We deal with it all the time. But like, changing the diapers, cleaning up the messes, spending our money, paying our bills, we don't really like doing any of that. We want to keep our money. We want to not have to do all this work just to maintain, just to break even. So, but we can resent all of that work. And if we avoid it, especially, we can create health problems, we can create financial problems, we can create enemies if we avoid the difficulty of the sixth house. Well, Saturn is geared towards facing difficulty. So when Saturn is in the sixth house, like in someone's natal chart, it's not like they'll like fixing problems, but they won't have an aversion toward showing up and doing the hard work. And again, the sixth house is a humbling energy, and Saturn is a humbling energy. So it's just like a parent is humbled by their love and devotion for their child, right? They'll resent all of that hard work if they have to do it for somebody they don't love. If I had to clean up your poop, I wouldn't really like it. I wouldn't spend all my money on you, but I'll spend all my money on my child, or I'll spend all my money on my art. I'll spend all my money on something that I love. And again, spending all the money is the sixth house thing. It's the debt you have to pay in order to have the thing you love. So Saturn is willing to work hard and pay the debts. So in the sixth house, he's very good at transforming work and effort into service and not resenting it. And then Saturn in the seventh house pressuring agreements. This is where Saturn has directional strength. And it's always confusing for people. Why would Saturn be strongest in the seventh house of other people? Well, it really tells you a lot about other people, Saturn, and our agreements. First of all, we're usually not very humble. Again, Saturn is about, look at the things I said, time, commitment, putting in the time, being sensitive because of our suffering, not being arrogant. We're so arrogant with each other. We think we're always right, and everything that upsets us, we're on a soapbox about, and remembering all the grievances that came our way and act as though we never do anything ourselves. We're not seeing it balanced. So when you get Saturn over there near the seventh house, first of all, it's furthest away from the first house. So there's been a lot of energy, and then it's over there in the seventh house. And then, so a few things happen. You are slow to commit to other people rather than just project everything onto the other person. Again, this is one of the big problems of the seventh house. As soon as we meet the person, we project all of our stuff onto them, and then they do nothing but disappoint us. So with Saturn, we're hesitant. We're like, I don't know, I'm a little careful. I'm guarded around other people. That's a good thing. And then when I do commit, I'm slow to commit. And then when I do, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going to really try. And then once it's over, I'm also like, okay, now this is too much. So again, boundaries are very important with other people, and boundaries are very good with Saturn. That's what Saturn is doing. He's boundaries. Even look at he's got a boundary around him. So again, you can see why Saturn near the seventh house is very good, and near the first house, there might be too many boundaries, right? So pressuring agreements, making them fortified and strong. It says pressuring destruction. So pressuring destruction, which is kind of like pressuring the change and transformation. And instead of having it destroy us, bringing the scrutiny and the pressure into the realm of destruction. So instead of it destroying us, it transforms us. So the real quality of the eighth house is where things get destroyed. And with Saturn, when things get destroyed, we then go in there and look at it, and we don't flinch. So again, this is one of the best places for Saturn because we're not scared of things we can't control. That's the other big motivator of the eighth house. Things we can't control. Because you have this illusion of control, and it's an illusion. You have control over certain things, mostly things of the second house, those values and whatnot. But the big things you don't have any control over. You could drop dead right now. You wouldn't know why. No one would know why. No one would be shocked. If out of the blue you drop dead, it would be shocking, but it's not shocking. Or whatever else it is. No control over other people, which is particularly what the eighth house is concerned with, because it comes after the seventh house, where we get in this agreement. And by the way, and then we realize how unpredictable everybody is in the eighth house. This is what makes us careful in the seventh house, like I just said. So with Saturn in the eighth house, that whole process becomes something where we bring pressure onto those things and go deeply into them. So we're really pressuring our insecurities. I could have said that as well. Pressuring our vulnerabilities. But we're also pressing into that aspect of life that is rife with destruction, and we're not turning away from it in fear. And again, eighth house in the highest sense, it's a moksha house, a liberation house, where we penetrate to the deepest mysteries in life without fear. And we need to confront our fears and our fear of death. And that's ultimately what Saturn is trying to do, and that's what the eighth house is trying to do. Ninth house pressuring teachings, a little more straightforward. Ninth house is about teachings, gurus, inspiration, higher purpose, religion, often is put in that bucket because, again, most of the things we believe in our teachings have some idea of what we would call religious or something like that. So it brings pressure there, Saturn in the ninth house, and maybe there's a strong conservatism, or it doesn't mean we're necessarily transforming or changing. In fact, we might be very fearful, and then we're going to pressure the teachings and go, is this real? And it's like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, now I really believe. And then we really commit to that religion. It often makes a person religious. I mean, let's face it, most people aren't spiritual in the sense of, at least you don't see most Westerners involved with astrology and Hinduism and all. It's perfectly natural in India because that's their religion. So Saturn in the ninth can just make someone really pressure their teachings and their beliefs and really concentrate on them and take them seriously. That's also just another aspect of Saturn, is we really take that area of life seriously. And in many ways, Saturn in the ninth house can really enhance a person's commitment to their religion and their devotion and things like that. But it's bringing pressure to these teachings. In the highest sense, it's pushing through the dogmatism towards something more authentic and inspiring. And then Saturn in the 10th house pressuring power. Because again, understand, I said all this at the beginning, but Saturn makes us aware of the limitations of the thing, like previous ninth house, the limitations of that belief system. So I realize it's not perfect. So what makes it complete? Because I still feel separate with these teachings. So, okay, now, a person will keep pressuring the teachings to find the real thing because we sense the limitation. Power, the same thing. Again, Saturn up here in 9th, 10th, 11th houses can be very ambitious, very Saturn in the 10th archetype of like workaholic, ambition, pressuring power. You can even just hear the like, ugh, oh my God. But yeah, it's like our duties and responsibilities and work is like everything. And we're pressuring how much power we have. We're just pressing like this much, more. And ultimately realizing that the true source of power is internal. So again, with all of the indicators that I stated, you should realize that the external pressuring that's going on has this kind of snapback effect that eventually leads us to the source, where then we find the inner power, right? The internal power, because the external quest fails, and it will eventually fail, right? So, but this, again, wherever Saturn is, we can really succeed in that area of life. So Saturn in the 10th house, Saturn in any of these houses brings great fruits in that area of life because his relentless focus is there. So again, you should see Saturn as a great blessing, even though it might be hard earned or it doesn't feel good all the time. But again, being mature in life means that you're not just here to try to feel good all the time. We're trying to accomplish things wherever Saturn is, or when he's aspecting certain, whatever the configuration is, whenever Saturn is influencing, there's going to be areas of life where you succeed because he's going to bring the focus. But you have to overcome the attachment and the stress behind it. And then eventually he's the great liberator in that way. Saturn 11th house, pressuring ambition. So again, this is also a kind of interesting one where very ambitious, but it's also pressuring ambition and saying, okay, is this really all that I had hoped it would be? Because again, we realize, okay, I've accomplished so much. Here I've accomplished all of this. But what does it get me? Okay, I started off as a fry cook. Then I became, the manager. Then I became the unit manager. Then I became the local manager. Now I'm a regional manager, and eventually, like it's like sort of climbing the rung of success and ambition and motivated toward the next level of competition. So in the lowest sense and in the stressful sense, Saturn is really committed to succeeding and being ambitious and accomplishing our goals. The 11th house is us in relationship to every other individual. So we're either competing with them, like in a corporate ladder, like climbing the corporate ladder in competition with everyone, or we're serving in the context of, like, instead of being in a competitive energy with large groups of people, we're aligned around a higher cause and everyone becomes our ally. We're all allies toward a higher cause rather than competing against each other to win. We would like our cause to win, not us individually to win. So you see this in like spiritual communities, churches, and whatnot. We rally around a common cause. So Saturn will be pressuring that ambition and bringing it into more of a service state. Saturn 12th house, pressuring surrender. Could have said pressuring escapism. Because in the 12th, again, Saturn brings this pressure, but now he's in this place of escapism. 12th house is where we lose focus. So he's like bringing this pressure in an area of life that's kind of diffuse. So he's kind of pressuring this surrender, escapist energy. So it can definitely lead to things like meditation and whatnot, but it's also, a place where we can be very creative. We can be, again, looking for the depth in letting go. But, Saturn, again, he's the part of us that is very much about worldly, tangible things like our money and the things that we need and want to sustain our life on Earth. And so he's that part of us that gets a little nervous when we don't have enough money and whatnot. So it's kind of confusing area of life, but it definitely leads to a strong capacity to be alone, to let go, and to, again, concentrate on what's beyond. And it could be very authentically spiritual because we're concentrating on that letting go aspect of life. So those are the 12 houses. And as you see, again, Saturn shows the pressure of time to reveal the truth over time, even his circuit around the zodiac, when he goes over one of your planets in the sky. Let's say you have planets right now as I record this, Saturn is in Aquarius. Let's say you have a planet in Aquarius. Well, the last time Saturn went over it was 30 years ago. He just came back over it again and he's saying, okay, now what have you done with this thing in 30 years, 28 years, right? He's the pressure of time. He comes back around every 30 years and says, how much have you grown? The heck with your ideas and emotions about it. I'm showing you the consequences. This is what's happened, right? The pressure of time to reveal the truth. As such, it can show a disconnection from the outer aspect of things. He gives a disconnection from the outer aspect to reveal an inner connection. And again, as such, it shows limitations with the outer world because we're not this outer experience. That's a facade. That's the egoistic projection. And Saturn shatters that and reveals the truth. No matter how great you were with whatever it is. Someone could have, when they were born, they could have Saturn in Aquarius now. Of course, many people do. People who were born in, let's say, 1965 or something, they're getting, and Saturn is in Aquarius. He's in his highest place there. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It means now you're getting the result of what you've been doing with that Saturn over that period of time. No matter how great it is, it's not perfect because we're living in the world through the ego. And he's going to reveal that. And in revealing that, it shows deep sensitivity to ourselves, to others. And so again, if you want to go deeper into these things as well, go to the website saturntruth.com. You'll see there's a great web page. All you need to do is just give your name and email address to join, and you can get that ebook on Saturn Truth, and you can get the full ebook as well for a small price. But these are interactive experiences as well, where you have embedded videos, and again, I've composited, Saturn overall. My videos on Capricorn, on Aquarius, on Saturn nakshatras, all of that stuff. So you can check that out. Either get the free ebook or, pay a little bit for the full ebook, which is also really not that much. But either way, happy Shani Jayanti, and I hope this helped you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel.